Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Andrew Stott, I'm the Emperor of Stomaria, and today we're continuing our series on how to start a micronation by discussing the territory of micronations. So the issue I've had with making a lot of these videos for the How to Start a Micronation series is that micronations are not all the same. They're very varied in terms of their outlook, in terms of their purpose, and this has made it very difficult to create videos that try to cover all aspects of micronationalism, because you have some micronations that are purely for satire, and you have micronations that are making a singular political point or campaigning on a particular issue. And so videos concerning currency or money, the economy, government type, these aren't as critically important, if not important at all, to those sorts of micronations. So the videos that I've made have primarily been geared towards those micronations that are looking to establish real-world communities, to have a sort of de facto independence by becoming more self-reliant, by establishing a community that reduces reliance on and contributions to the macronation that they're a part of through legal and legitimate means. And I think that that shines through quite well through most, if not all, of the videos that I've made about this particular subject. But for the purposes of this video, I just wanted to make it clear that territory is it's one of those videos where to some micronations it'll be more applicable than others. But for micronations like the Empire of Stomaria that are looking to acquire private freehold land in order to utilize, in order to promote our values and objectives, this is where I want to focus most of my attention for the remainder of this video. Because there really isn't a lot to say about those micronations that merely claim land. I suppose the one thing I would say is that if you are claiming land that you do not own or have some control and authority over, don't start utilizing it in a way that's going to get you in trouble. Don't go to a public park, start digging it up and planting potatoes. Don't go into someone's woodland and start hacking down trees or building dwellings or whatever else, because I think that's a very good way to get yourself in a lot of trouble, and it's probably something you want to avoid moving forward. So I just want to mention that quickly, but aside from that minor point, I want to focus the rest of this video on micronations that are looking to acquire land in order to utilize it, in order to promote their values, their objectives, in order to build that real-world community. So the first thing I wanted to mention is that I did make a video about government structures some time ago in the How to Start a Micronation series, and in it I went over why I thought absolute monarchism was the best form of government for a micronation to have if it was going to go down the same route as the Empire of Stomaria, which is the acquisition of private freehold land. And I wanted to touch on this a little bit more, because this is something that a lot of micronations that are looking to acquire land need to think about. Because if you know, put in years of your time and energy and money into building your micronation, and then you finally get to the point where you can purchase some private freehold land and you can crack on with promoting the values and objectives that you've been campaigning on for some time. If you are a democracy or a republic or something to that effect, how does that affect the utilization of that land? So if you are the president, for example, of your micronation, and you purchase the land, but then you're voted out of office, what happens? That is the question you need to ask yourself, because there's a lot of people that will say that you've been voted out of office, so the land that made up the Micronation's territory, is no longer yours. And the new president, who may not be related to you, or might not even be a friend of yours, or whatever else, might be someone you've never met or had very little association with, might even be someone you're not particularly fond of at all. But if they become the next president, and it's within their authority to utilize that land in whichever way that they see fit, then is that something you'd be comfortable with? Because at the end of the day, from a macronational legal perspective, presumably if you have purchased that land yourself, it is your land. So if you're not happy with that land being utilized in a way you disagree with, in other words, if you don't want another president to utilize that way in a way you disagree with, or you don't want the community to use that land in a way that you disagree with, then going down the road of democracy or republicanism or something like that as a form of government is not going to work for you, I don't think. It may do, it depends on what sort of policies or conventions, whatever you have in place, but that is just something to think about. And leading on from that a little bit more, how are you going about purchasing this land? As I said, one of the examples is, one of the ways you can do this is to purchase the land yourself with your own, you know, put your own blood, sweat and tears into something, raise enough funds to purchase that land, and then basically claim that land, claim that territory, that private freehold land as a part of your micronation's territory. But there are obviously ways you can do it aside from that. So you could do some sort of fundraising, sort of crowdfunding campaign. You know, you could get your citizens or supporters to contribute financially to the purchase of this land. And so, for example, if you and the people involved in your micronation, if you all purchase the land together, are you going all equal shares? Are you putting the bulk of the funds yourself and then they're just topping it up? I mean, how is that reflected from a legal perspective? What happens if you all go in with equal shares, but one of you decides that they want to drop out? Are the others forced to buy you out? Do you need their approval to utilize the land at all? I mean, you know, hypothetically, if there's 10 of you and you each put in £1,000 and you buy a £10,000 plot of land, it's all fine and dandy, but then 5 of you want to use land in one way, 5 of you want to use the land in another way. So what happens? Does nothing happen? Does land get split up? Is it divided amongst yourselves? And, you know, if, again, same example, if there's 10 of you, you each put in £1,000, £10,000 plot. 2 of you no longer want to be a part of the micronation. 4 of you want to change the government type from a republic to, I don't know, a monarchy, and another 4 have decided that they want to, you know, become a fascist state. So what happens? You know, these are the things you've got to think about. If you're going the route of democracy, if you're going down the route of republicanism, you have to take into account that people aren't going to agree with everything. You will be eventually voted out of office. Well, I say eventually, you might potentially be voted out of office. You know, people will leave your micronation. So if they've invested a lot of time and money in that micronation, if they have a stake in your micronation, how is that going to affect you? So again, these are all just questions that you need to ask yourselves, because I suppose out of all the videos, this is probably the most important, because there are very real, very legal ramifications if things go wrong. And so you want to make sure everything's above board, you want to make sure all the boxes are ticked, and you want to make sure that you and everyone else involved in your micronation know exactly what the situation is and what happens under certain circumstances or situations when they arise. And this is why I think that absolute monarchism is the best way for a micronation to be governed. So, like the Empire of Stomaria, when we purchase land, the private freehold land, the territory that makes up Sumeria, is mine. It is legally mine. I can do whatever I want with it. Citizens, they may contribute financially to the project in the sense that they'll pay a monthly fee through our Patreon campaign to become citizens, or nobles, lords and ladies. They might buy merchandise. They might watch our videos on YouTube, which generates ad revenue. They might in some way contribute to our real-world economic activities. So, the production of eggs, the sale of chickens, the logging of lumber to sell those. They might contribute in some way to those, but all of the funds that are raised goes into the Imperial Treasury, which is a segregated bank account, which is in my name, which I control. It is designated Stomaria. It is a Stomarian bank account in that sense, but it is, legally speaking, my bank account. And the funds in that bank account are going to be used exclusively for the purchase of additional territory and additional land. But that additional land, additional territory will also be mine. And when I am no longer the Emperor of Stomaria, then the chances are that the way that we're structured, we're a hereditary absolute monarchy. So my daughter, Princess Eleanor, she will inherit all of that land. That is about as clear-cut and simple as you can make it. The citizens of Stomaria, they obviously, and this is something I want to encourage, is I want them to be able to utilize that land in some way. I want them to be able to host events there. I want them to be able to grow their own vegetables there and plant their own fruit trees, or raise their own livestock, or set up little businesses or something on there. That is what I would like to see. But at the end of the day, I have absolute authority over that land. I have absolute total control over what happens with that land. And that is the way I want it. It is the most secure, simple, straightforward, clear-cut way to govern a micronation and to explain as concisely as possible what the situation is regarding the territory of that land. Now, there are a few caveats with this. So, for example, one of the types of territory that make up Stomaria are associated states. And associated states is private freehold land of another micronation, but that micronation has decided to become a part of the Stomarian Empire. And so, for example, the Kingdom of Wayward, which is an associated state within Stomaria, King Raoul, he owns that land, and he can utilize that land in whichever way he sees fit, and he can quite happily take himself out of the Empire of Stomaria, and we would lose a chunk of land because that land is something that we count towards our total. But as a part of the Empire of Stomaria, both myself and eventually other Stomarians will, with his blessing, be able to utilize that land in a way that is mutually beneficial. And, we've already seen this in practice in the last few months, in that we have purchased chickens directly from the Kingdom of Wayward, and they are being raised at the Kingdom of Wayward. We're going to be purchasing beehives. We don't have anywhere to put them here, but they do at the Kingdom of Wayward, so they're going to be put at the Kingdom of Wayward, and from there we're going to make honey, and then honeymead. There's trees, dangerous pine trees at the Kingdom of Wayward. We're paying to have those taken down, and then the people at Wayward are going to log them and season them for us on their land, but they will be our logs. We are purchasing the trees. So we're purchasing the trees, and we're purchasing the trees to be taken down. So it does them a favour because they're dangerous trees which need to be taken down. It's going to let in more sunlight. It's going to allow them to grow more fruits and vegetables and things like that, and allow more local wildlife to thrive. But because we're also purchasing the logs, and the logs are being seasoned at the Kingdom of Wayward, we are also being able to benefit from that. So again, that is private freehold land that I don't personally own, but it nevertheless forms part of the empire. But that is the exception. All other forms of territory, i.e. provinces and protectorates, is private freehold land that is directly owned by me, or more specifically, me and Samantha, my family, the imperial family. That is who owns the land, and it will stay within the imperial family for as long as Sumeria exists. and I want to make that clear from my own perspective. But I also just want to use us as the most obvious example I can think of as a way, or as the way that I think works best. You might think differently, you might have a different system in place, but again, when it comes to territory, government structure, government type, the way you go about yourselves, that does play a major part in how you go about acquiring that private land. So I just wanted to go over that in as much detail. I might have gone over it a few more times than I should have, but I wanted to make the point as clearly as I can that government type, the form of government that you have, that matters when it comes to the territory of your micronation, if you are going down the route of private freehold land that is purchased legally and legitimately, which, as an aside, is the only way you should go about acquiring territory for your micronation if you are looking to utilize that land. So again, just wanted to make that as clear as I could. In terms of the type of land that you buy, I mean, that really is, a personal preference. There has been land available around where we are, which we have not purchased, not because it's not affordable, but because it's just, farmland. It's, either grassland or farmland in the middle of nowhere. And we are not able to utilize that in a way that I would want. So what we personally are looking for are small plots of land that have a bit more, I suppose, character to it. I mean, in terms of, I'd rather have a small plot of land that was, had some open space, but then also was, partially or if not entirely wooded, maybe a little stream running through it, something with a bit more to it than just a plot of, farmland in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of a field. I mean, obviously, depending on where you are, it might be just like desert land where you are. I mean, you can obviously purchase that. There's nothing wrong with purchasing that sort of land if you're going to look, looking to establish a real world community. But are you able to utilize that land in any meaningful way? Again, just something to ask yourself. If you're just purchasing it for the sake of purchasing it, it's obviously your choice. But a patch of desert land with nothing on it and very little potential for, agriculture or the establishment of dwellings or anything like that, that may not be the best thing to go about doing. But again, it's a personal choice. If your micronation is aspiring to build something, a community, in an area where there is a lot of that sort of arid land, then go for it. Just make sure you have some sort of plan in place. Make sure you know what you're doing before you pull the trigger, because once you've purchased that land, it might be quite difficult to get rid of it. Or it certainly will be, unnecessary aggro to try and get rid of it. So whatever land that you do purchase, just make sure that you are going to be in it for the long haul, and make sure, again, as I've said, make sure you think about the way you go about purchasing it, about who purchases it, about who legally owns it, and all the rest of it. But yeah, I think this video is probably long enough. You're all sensible enough to try to understand what I am trying to reiterate and what I'm trying to say. As you said, I am very conscious of the fact that there are people out there that think that they can just go into, wander into a woodland and start chopping down trees and stuff because they're a micronation and they're sovereign and they're independent. I have made a video on micronational sovereignty in this very series. You should go and watch that if you think that's a good idea. But I just wanted to make it as clear and concise as possible that purchasing land is a major step for a micronation to take. And so careful thought, planning, and preparation needs to go into this sort of step before you take it, because there are very real world ramifications, very real world issues that can arise if you don't think about these things beforehand. So if you enjoyed that video, please feel free to give the video a like, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we'll catch you in the next one.